Should old acquaintance be forgotten? Welcome to 2021. In this video, you're going to learn how to crush your 2021 worship leading goals. Coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com, your daily dose of practical worship leading tips. This is the place where we talk about how to lead yourself well, lead your church well, and lead worship well. So if you're interested in that, make sure to hit subscribe down below as we step into a brand new year. I'm going to be putting out a bunch of hopefully amazing videos about worship leading. But in this video, the first one of 2021, we need to talk about setting and getting and destroying your 2021 worship leading goals. I'm going to walk you through 5 things that you need to do if you want to succeed in meeting and exceeding your goals today. But before we get into that, I just want you to answer one thing. I just want you to start the goal setting process right now. Let me know in the comments below, what is one of your worship leading goals for 2021? Is it I want more members on my worship team? Is it I want to introduce some new songs? Is it I want to learn something new on guitar? I want to learn how to tap, which you probably don't need if you're leading worship, but who knows, maybe. Whatever your worship leading goal for 2021 is, just one of them. You should probably have more than that, but if you just have one, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. I'll talk to you in a second. Thanks so much for leaving your goal down there below. What's my goal? I probably should have thought about that before I made this video. You know, from a bird's eye view, I just started at a new church this past year. So I think my goal, by the way, you can check out that journey right here. I'm still not sure if I'm pointing to the right side. Fingers crossed. You can check that video out where I walk you through my first week at my new church. But I just started at this new church and I'm trying to build the worship ministry. So I've got some worship team members. My goal is to not lead worship by myself for the entirety of this year. I want to get other people involved. Right now it's just me and an acoustic guitar at this church. I've got other team members who are ready to go, so we're going to work together and make that happen. That's my goal for 2021. Let's talk about how to crush your 2021 worship leading goals. The first thing you need to do in order to crush your worship leading goals is to set aside time to create those goals. Those goals aren't going to magically come to you. It takes a little work. You got to put in a little work beforehand and figure out, what is the vision for where I want my team to go this year? Or where do I want my personal worship leading to go? Sit down and think about, what can I improve upon this year? There's always something to improve upon, and that question will help you inform what your goals should be for 2021. So first, before you do anything else this year, don't walk into this year without a vision. Take some time, even if you sacrifice a little preparation for this Sunday or for a worship practice coming up or whatever. I truly believe that this is that important, that you should take an hour or 2 or longer and simply sit down and pray about what your goals should be for this year. Think about, where do I want my worship leading to be? Where do I want my worship team to be? Where do I want my church's understanding of what worship is to be? Where it's at right here for 2021. When I get to 2022, where do I want it to be? And what are the tangible, measurable, achievable, whatever that acronym that people overquote is. It's kind of true, but the SMART goals. Yeah, I can't remember what it is. Timely, whatever. What are my goals that are going to help me achieve where I want my church to be at the end of 2022? Set aside time, figure it out. The second thing to do is, don't do that process that I just talked about where you're setting goals. Don't do it in a vacuum. If it's just you on your worship team, go ahead and do it with just you, because you are your worship team. But here's the thing that you need to do. Involve your worship team in your process. If this is about a vision and goals for your worship team, people are going to own those goals if you include them in the process. You know, it's one thing if I come to my worship team and I say, guys, in 2021, we're going to memorize our music. And they'll be like, that's not my goal. Like, I'm not doing that. But if you lead them to that spot in a meeting, and at your next worship practice, you say, instead of running through our songs at this next rehearsal, we're going to pick a bunch of songs that we already know, and we're going to spend that time coming up with goals. And you involve your team in the process because that allows them to own the goals. Plus, it doesn't rely on you completely solely to come up with the goals for your worship team, because there's benefit in surrounding ourselves with other people and hearing their points of view, because they're going to see things that you don't see. You're going to see things that they don't see. At the end of the day, if you're leading your team, yes, you get to make the decision of what your goal should be, but we want input from them. And we want them to own the goals that we have, because if you're trying to set goals for your team and you don't involve them in the process, you aren't going to reach them, because it takes your team to reach the goals for your team. And if they don't accept the premise of the goals, they aren't really going to care about reaching them. So get them to care about reaching the goals set by involving them in the goal setting process. Let's talk a little bit about what that goal setting process looks like, because I don't think it's very helpful if I say, go ahead and meet with your worship team and set some goals. I don't think there's any skin and bones on that. So let's put some form to it so we actually know what we're doing. The third thing that you need to do whenever you're setting your goals, or to crush your 2021 worship leading goals, is you need to ask the question with your team. After you've set aside time to do this, ask the question, what can we celebrate that happened this last year? We want to start by reflecting on the past year, because what we're going to be talking about whenever we set our goals, which we'll get there in a minute, is what can we improve upon. And essentially what you're asking is, what did we not do well this year? Or, I mean, it's not necessarily like that, but that's kind of how people will view it, is like, we want to improve. That means that we didn't do things this year the best that we possibly could. There's room for improvement. And so we want to start with celebrating what happened. So think about for yourself. Think about the whole year. Like, what were some highlights of the year? And I want you to challenge your team as you set aside this time and start planning your goals to come up with 3 things to celebrate from this past year. Was it, hey, we had new people join the worship team? Was it, we had somebody new actually lead worship, like be the main worship leader, be the team leader? Was it our church like really took a step in going, being more expressive in their worship? Whatever it is, celebrate that. We want to start with celebrations, and there should be a lot to celebrate. 2020 was a crazy year, but I'm sure you learned a lot as we kind of transitioned from online to in-person and all of this crazy stuff. There's reason to celebrate. Say, man, I think we really handled that transition between in-person and online. Like, we figured that out. Now we have live stream. Whatever it is, I'm just throwing out a bunch of different ideas. Ask your team and yourself what went well in 2020. Now that we've celebrated what needed to be celebrated, it's time to go a little bit further. We've done the celebration part. Now, in order to set our goals, we have to identify what we can improve. So instead of asking, what did we do horribly wrong last year that we need to fix, or you're all kicked off the worship team, simply ask the question, what can we do better? There's always room for improvement, and it doesn't mean that you did something poorly last year. It's just, as a worship team, we grow over time, we get better. And so ask them, what can we do better this year? What can we focus on? And this question is going to inform your goals for the coming year, because you're going to be able to look back and say, hey guys, remember in the first week of January when we set our goals, we talked about memorizing our music so that we could be more free in our worship during our worship leading. And then you can say, how are we doing on that? And it's like, you're still using your music stand, right? We can point back and kind of use this as a time to reset expectations. But we want to get, like I talked about, our team to own these goals and set them. So think about that. What can we do better? Not what did you do bad that you're a horrible person and need to fix, but what can we do better? And get your team to own it and set the goals together. And finally, the 5th thing to crush your 2021 worship leading goals is I put together something free for you that I want you to walk through by yourself or with your team. It's called 5 Questions to Crush Your 2021 Worship Leading Goals. It's a free PDF worksheet that you can use at your next worship practice, where I walk you through some of these questions that I just talked about. And by the end of it, you're going to have your goals for the coming year. And you can do it by yourself. You can set aside some time and do it by yourself, or you can do it with your team, or you can do both of those things. You can set some goals for yourself and you can work with your team. So check that out in the description below. I think it's a great resource that will help you get on the right track to start setting these goals and improving your worship leading in 2021, not just for you, but for your worship team as well. So thanks so much for joining me. That's how you crush your 2021 worship leading goals. You involve your team and get them to own the goals that you set. You set aside time to actually work on this. It's not going to happen just randomly. You need to put in the work to make it happen. Set aside time for yourself, set aside time for your team to do this together, and then ask, what can we celebrate from this last year? Start with a celebration, something positive. Then after that, ask, what can we do better? How do we improve this year? Doesn't mean that we were horrible last year. It just means that there's always room for improvement. And then check out the link in the description below, where I give you like a worksheet that you can use to just do everything that we just talked about. There's a link to that down in the description below. Thanks so much for joining me today. Until I see you in the next video, have a great 2021 and keep leading worship well.